Welcome to Carrickfergus Vineyard, a place of hope where lives are changing. We're a church in the heart of Carrickfergus, passionate about seeing people's lives changed by the love of Jesus. The following message was given at one of our Sunday services.
Well, good morning, folks. Nice to see your faces. Chantel sends her love. She's in Manchester Vineyard this morning, joining our really good friends there, Paul and Steph Lowe, who lead the incredible Vineyard Church. She's there with our daughter Hope, and they're looking at universities. So I'm flying solo this morning. So anything that I say that's bad, I just put my foot in it, which is very possible. You don't tell her. You promise? Yeah? And the podcast can be tweaked later. There we go. It's really lovely to gather together as it is every single week. And what I love doing actually at the beginning every single week is I get up and I go have a look and look around you, see your lovely faces. And it's so nice to see so many new people, guests here, some who are checking us out, some from the past who are either returning or dipping their toe in the water or whatever it might be. And whoever you are, whether you've been with us like Brian from day one with Jude, or whether you're just new to checking us out, you are super, super welcome, and you're in for a real treat this morning as we dive in and continue our series on Mark's Gospel, which we've called Marked, play on words and all that. And I just wonder, there's that stat, isn't there, about developing new habits. You know, you want to begin a new habit, a really good, healthy habit, not necessarily a bad one. You kind of do it for a certain period of time. It's something like a month. Is that right? Help me out. 6 weeks, is it? Okay. Oh, we got a couple of weeks to go. Okay. So we started our new teaching series 5 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago. We're into week 5. We had an introduction week. We've got Mark chapter 4 today. That is 28 days. 28 days of bringing your Mark's Gospel with you. If you've brought Mark's Gospel with you, raise it in the air. You're all going to heaven. If you've got another Bible, well done. Even better, you've got 65 other books to look at. If you haven't, you've got it on your phone. That's fantastic as well. It's about developing new habits and what have you, and bringing a paper version to church. Really, really helpful, really healthy as we embark on this journey, as we're traveling through Mark's Gospel. Next week will be a break. We'll break from that because it's our special 15th birthday, as you've heard. We're going to have lots of stories from the past and lots of things of what God's doing right here and right now. And we're going to commission Brian. We're going to really celebrate him. So, you know, if people are not here today, they're part of the church family, tell them they've got to be here next week. It's a really important one. Really, really important one. And we get to have pizza afterwards as well. So that's absolutely tremendous. You may have noticed, often, not always, that whenever I stand up and speak, that I usually kick off with a story. And there's good reason. Here's a story. As a substitute teacher in this school, I have had the privilege and the honor of teaching most classes and most subjects, from maths to English to Spanish to technology, home ec, even child development. I'm an expert, absolutely. And, do you know, it's quite terrifying when you go from class to class to class to class to class throughout the whole day thinking, gosh, first of all, who am I going to get? Like, is it going to be a good class or is it going to be a challenging class? And here's the thing, is there work that's been set that's better than, you know, do a poster on healthy living or something, a waste of time kind of subject thing? Did I really say that? Did I really say that? You know it's true, Alan. And so when you come to a classroom and you've let the kids in and you like log on to the computer and you look at the teacher's desk and you just pray and it's good stuff. And then when you find there's absolutely nothing set and the teacher has dropped the ball, you're like, oh my gosh, I've got 30 minutes, possibly 60 minutes with this lot in front of me. What the am I going to do? What am I going to do? And the time and time and time again, I've managed to blag something. And it's really, really helped me become an even better storyteller. Because often what I do is I just stand up and tell them stories. I tell them stories how once upon a time I was selected for a football team that played at Stamford Bridge. And they're like, "What, Flip, did you do it?" Yeah, I never got on the pitch, but I was on the bench. I tell them my story when I'm in Russia and I got arrested and we got locked up in Moscow airport. True story. I tell them all these different things and they're hooked in like you are right now. And it leads on to something that's greater. And Jesus was an absolute genius at telling stories. Absolute genius, and they're called parables. And we're going to look today in chapter 4 of Mark's Gospel. There's 5 passages, there's 5 parts to it, and 4 of them are parables. And just briefly to introduce this, that parables, let's have a quick look at the Greek word for parable is up on the screen there, and it's made up of parabole or bole, or however you pronounce that. Literally, bole basically means to throw or throwing, and then para means alongside, and by extension meaning comparison, illustration, or analogy. There were 46 recorded parables in the 4 Gospels. And in fact, what we look at today, it's not the first time in Mark's Gospel that we see a parable. If you're taking notes and you want to kind of go back and kind of outline them or number them, if you go back to Mark's Gospel, Mark 2, you'll find that there were 2 parables in there also. Before we dive in, it's worth noting the parables that Jesus employed, this tactic, was used usually when he was teaching, especially the crowds. He was gathering a lot of interest, as you can imagine, as he came and he declared the gospel, as he proclaimed and pronounced the kingdom, as was much of his teaching. It was accompanied by signs and wonders, these incredible things that only he could do. And it was naturally at that time gathering a crowd. And they were hungry and they were interested and they were intrigued. But much of it was, what's he going to do next? What miracle is he going to perform next? And that was the thing that was hooking people in, drawing people in, as you can well imagine. But Jesus wanted to go much further than just a whizzy, incredible miracle. He wanted people's hearts. That's what he was really, really after. And he sought to draw people's attention to him. And he used words and he used story and used parable really, really effectively. And so often he told this story. He would tell a story about something. And people were listening and they were intrigued, but then he kind of just left it there. And people were a bit like, duh, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? Have you ever read a parable and you're like, gosh, what the heck is he actually going on about? You ever done that? Just me? Yeah, often. Some of these parables that we read, they're these stories. We're like, Jesus, what did you actually mean? And we're so glad that Mark, along with the other 3, that they wrote these stories. We're so glad that we have Bible scholars and also that we're able to actually understand and learn from these. And in fact, we're gonna see how Jesus himself spoke to his disciples and told them the meaning of these parables. So we're going to look this morning, Mark 4. The first bit is the parable of the sower, which is kind of the main course. That's like the steak on the plate. That's like the main bit of chapter 4. But it's accompanied, if we picture it as a plate, the vegetables or the chips or whatever that's on the plate. We have the lamp and then the growing seed, the mustard seed. And they're all related to the kingdom. Our dessert today at the very end is when Jesus calms the storm, and we'll get to there as well. And so, again, I put the passage up on the screen. If we could have the next screen, that would be really helpful. So there it is. I'm not going to read it word for word. It's there. You have it in front of you, or however you're following along. I'm just going to obviously tease it out and talk through things. So Jesus says, he talks about this man, farmer, scattering seed. The farmer is God himself. The seed is the word that represents the word. And the farmer's scattering seeds on 4 types of ground. Many of you will know the story. It's very, very familiar to us. The first place where the seed fell was on the path. The second on rocky places. The third among the thorns. 4th on good soil. And I thought, rather than me actually reading it and teaching it, I wonder, is it possible to show us just a little video? Could we?
How can it be that that I inspire and transform some people, but seem to threaten and repulse others. And so, as I said, I'd like to respond with a story. A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil.
Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil.
Immediately they sprang up, for there was no depth of soil.
And immediately they sprang up, for there was no depth of soil.
But when the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away.
And since they had no root, they withered away.
The thorns grew up and choked them.
Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them.
And the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain. Some 100-fold, some 60, some 30.
Some 100-fold, some 60, some 30.
He who has ears to hear, let him hear.
He who has ears to hear, let him hear.
But yet rejecting me as I am indebted.
And so we have this story. The farmer represents God. The seed is his word. And the first place it scatters onto is the path. And path, there's no soil really, and so the birds quickly come and eat up the seed. And the second place was the rocky place, and it grew up quickly. But because there was no root, the plant withered away. And then thirdly, we've got the thorns. And the seed would grow up together with the thorns, but the thorns would choke the crop and kill and destroy. And then lastly, we have the good soil, which would produce a crop, some 30, some 60, some 100-fold. And Jesus at the very end there, he says these incredible words. He says, whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. What a powerful saying. What's he saying? As a teacher in a classroom, you get to know who's listening. And they may not be talking. They may not be fiddling or doing anything else. But they're just in the room, but they're not listening. And you can tell. I can do it right now as I'm looking out. Those who are in and who are listening, and those who are away thinking something else or whatever it might be. Jesus is saying, hey guys, listen up. Pay attention. And it's way deeper than pay attention to the words that are coming. He's saying, pay attention to the words which I speak. If you have ears to hear, hear. Go much deeper than just listen to the words, but pay attention to my words. And that's what Jesus is really saying there. The hearers there, the crowds that Jesus speaks to, he is looking to hook them in. He is looking for them to go deeper, and that's why he uses parables. He throws these words out, and it leaves the hearers thinking, gosh, what does that mean? Instead of telling them the exact truth there and then, he's looking for followers that will go much deeper, that will ponder the things of the kingdom and search out the things of the kingdom. The disciples themselves, they didn't understand. Like they didn't understand many, many times. And we read later there that away from the crowds, Jesus begins to explain to the 12 the meaning behind the parable. And he firstly explains, says the secret, the mystery of the kingdom has been given to you. And he's talking to his disciples there. He's saying the mystery of the kingdom, of what it is and what it is about. As I bring it as the king to you here on earth, the mystery of the kingdom is given to you. He who has ears to hear, listen, pay attention to what is in these words is really what Jesus, he's hooking them in, he's drawing them in, and that's why he uses these these stories to help explain something that's deeper. And he quotes Isaiah, he says, they on the outside may be ever seeing, but never perceiving. He who has ears to hear, listen, pay attention, look and see what he is at and what he is doing. We're so grateful to Mark for documenting these things. And so Jesus goes on with his disciples and he does explain the meaning behind the story, the parable. And the first is simple. The path is a hard place. It's a trodden place. It's where the seed, as the word goes out, takes no roots whatsoever. And it represents the kind of person that listens to the words but just dismisses it completely, pays no relevance, no response whatsoever to God's word. Then we have the rocky ground. And this depicts the person whose belief or Christianity or whatever it is marked by bless me. And the person is prepared to follow Jesus when it's all sunny and rosy in the garden, all the blessings of life in all its fullness, and resurrection life and eternal life and all the rest, but not prepared to take up their cross following of crucifixion. And so when trouble and persecution comes, there is no root, there is no depth of relationship. And so sadly, a person may fall away, using our kind of spiritual jargon. Thirdly, the seed that falls amongst the thorns. This represents the person whose discipleship attempts to kind of live alongside other things. It's kind of like we've got one foot in both camps of the God bless me, God, I turn up on a Sunday and I seek to do the right things, but actually on the other side of the foot, the 6 days of the week, I'm doing this, that, the other. Could be the worries of this life. It could be the need for wealth or need for importance or the need for the things of this world. And the two kind of grow up together. We have the plant of the good seed of the soil that's kind of growing and growing, seeking life, but actually it's growing up with the weeds and the thorns, and it's just choking the living daylights out of the life that Jesus is really promising to us. And then we have, of course, the good soil. A person whose heart is yielded and surrendered fully to God, one who is prepared to follow, to have ears to hear, to see, to listen, to obey, to pay attention, and do the very things that God is leading and calling us. And when Jesus says, come follow me, we follow him, regardless of what that looks like, what that means, and what that's going to cost us. So what? So what? How do we apply this to our lives? Well, I guarantee, as I've been saying those things, you've probably been thinking of people in your life that you can think, gosh, yes, I know that person. They were a Christian for maybe 3 months, and they began such a good race. And then they just fell away and they paid no attention to it. Maybe you place yourself in that story yourself and you go, gosh, perhaps right now I'm living in kind of the thorny side of life right now. And actually I need to just pay attention and cultivate some good soil that I can actually grow and what have you. He who has ears, let him hear. Will you surrender? Will you invite Jesus to till the good soil of your heart? Let's move swiftly on. That's the main bit. That's the stake. But the other bits, they complement it so brilliantly. And so stay tuned in if you can. Verses 10 and 12, if you're taking notes, draw yourself a little arrow to these verses because they complement its meaning. So this parable is split into two. We have the parable of the lamp, that's verses 21 to 23, and then the parable of the measure. And the lamp is this. Jesus asks his disciples, says, do you put a lamp under a bowl or under a bed? Of course you don't. You put it on its stand. Do you remember those little lamps they had, kind of made of clay pottery? They would have lit the lamp and they would have put it up on a high place and it gives light to the whole room. This is the second time that Jesus has used this analogy. He used it earlier, and Matthew documents it in chapter 5, which is part of the Sermon on the Mount. And he says, no, you don't light a lamp and put it under a bowl. That's just stupid. You put it on its stand so that it gives light and it illuminates the whole room. And this simply means the hidden and concealed mysteries of the kingdom are to be revealed. They will come to light in due course and in time. And we read through Mark, and in fact, any of the Gospels, we begin to discover who this Jesus really is. Jesus is the light of the world, and he keeps revealing the kingdom because he is the King. The promised Messiah, which they so desperately wanted and prayed for, had come. But much of what they'd anticipated, what they thought of, had not come in quite the fulfillment that Jesus had come. The light is coming and has indeed come, and he is the King, and that is himself that he describes. Do you remember the private conversation with Nicodemus, John chapter 3? You know, John 3:16, probably the biggest, most well-known verse in the Bible. Jesus is having this conversation with Nicodemus, and he talks about light, that light has come into the world. He later describes himself. He says, I am the light of the world. He describes that about himself. And then later, recorded in John, he says that you are the light of the world. Verse 24, verse 25. Because the measure you see it and hear it will be the measure it will be given to you. Any thoughts? Oh. Bit of AI going on over there. Siri, Alexa, the Holy Spirit. The measure you see it will be the measure it will be given to you. Again, Jesus speaks of the kingdom. This is the kingdom that he speaks of. Let's adopt the same economic axiom to help us understand. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Those who the measure has been given to them, greater the measure will become. It simply means this. It simply is saying those who've tasted and seen, those who've looked and listened, those who've paid attention, those who've put into practice, those who've surrendered, even more will be given to you. But to those who've not paid attention, the little that they have will be taken away. The measure in which you've received, the measure it will be given to you. And then let's skip forwards. I'm looking at the time here. The parable of the growing seed. The growing seed. Again, this and the mustard seed, these next two, speak of the kingdom, and they complement what Jesus has already talked about with the parable of the sower. The first, the growing seed, is about the growth of the kingdom, and the mustard seed is about the triumph of the kingdom. Jesus tells this story of a man who scatters seed, and he's like, he doesn't know how it grows. It just suddenly, whether it's night or day or whatever the circumstances are, things just start happening. You know, I am not a horticulturalist. We have our allotment, and it never ceases to amaze me that when we put stuff in the ground, that somehow something grows up. And I don't do much there, and those of you who've been with me at the allotment, you'll know that I kind of look around more than I actually do stuff. It's just amazing. Stuff just happens. Whether I'm there or whether I'm not there, whether I'm paying attention to it, it's just stuff happens. Though he does not know how it grows, secretly working away without labor, just steadily growing in the ground. But step by step, a stalk appears out of the ground, then an ear, then full grain comes, and then it's ripe, and then it's harvest time. The meaning is clear. The kingdom of God is always present in our world. Often when the world doesn't see it, and often we don't see it. Oh God, give us eyes to see and ears to hear. The growth of the kingdom is secretive. It just happens. It's happening all the time. Give us eyes to see, ears to see. Where you're at work. Even when we don't see it, he's working. Even when we don't feel it, he's working. He never stops working. He's at work, and the kingdom is always advancing, even when we don't see it. Jesus says, again, the Nicodemus passage, John 3, go there, write it in your notes. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it goes. As I'm writing this talk, I have this really profound moment, this revelation, and I don't usually, if you know me, you know that I don't kind of talk like this. It was a big moment of God, what I'm reading and what I'm speaking now is what's happening in our church right now. And those of you that I've had other conversations with, you'll know it, you'll perceive it, you'll see it. We're seeing it right here and right now. I would say that for the last number of years, it's been difficult. Going back to pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID, laboring ministering has been really challenging for lots of different reasons. And I've found it at times to be challenging to see, well, where's the fruit? Where's the fruit of labor? Flip, we've been busting our butts. Excuse me. Hit pause on the podcast. We've been working quite hard. But where's the fruit? Where's the seed? Where's the stalk? Unbeknown to us, God has been working. He's been at work. Even though we don't see it, He has been at work in your lives, in our hearts. Over the last number of weeks, I've noticed there are a number of people coming to the church for the first time, some returning. I said this at the very beginning. I spoke to a lady 2 or 3 weeks ago. I said, I know you, don't I? They're not here today, so I can talk about this like this. I said, I know you, don't I? And I said, yeah. And I said, how do I know you? I said, I used to come back in the days when you were at the other school. I said, oh, wow, yes, remind me your name. I had this conversation. I said, tell me, why did you come today? And they said, I just felt I should come today. In fact, I've been meaning to come for quite a while now, and this person had the courage and the bravery to get up, get a shower, get to church. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And that same story I could apply to some of you who are in this room and to others who are not in this room but have been in this room over literally the month of September. We're beginning to see shoots coming up out of the ground, seeds that have been sown in your hearts, in your minds, in your life, and God has been at work. The kingdom of God has been advancing, and suddenly you're a shoot, you're a stalk, you're coming, you're springing up out of the soil, and He's been at work, even though we didn't see it. I want to read something to us. Chantel and a number of other folks were at an incredible family festival gathering in the summer in June called Nua. For leaders, they offered this opportunity to receive prayer and prophetic prayer. And so Chantel and Brian and Jenna went, and a group of guys prayed for them. And I want to read to you a prophetic word which was given to these guys, because I think it really links in. So this was in June, we're now in October, and this is what it said. I just get a picture of the 4 soils from the parable of the sower and the seed, and asking maybe in this season, what is God doing and what soil are sowing into? That might be that there are different ministries and different things that you are doing where actually there are some weeds that need to be pulled out. I actually saw a lot of freshly plowed land that had a lot of seeds and a lot of weeds and rocks taken out of it. But it is to be aware that the type of soil that you are sowing into and the work that needs to go into it before planting. It feels like that there is different ministries, different areas that the church is working in, that there are different levels of fruitfulness with, and different areas of work, and so on. Of the things that happens with certain soils, when you pick the rocks out of the ground, you come back the next year and there are more rocks there. And that's because of a thing called, and he wrote this, transmetamorphosis, where the rocks actually start to work their way up from the ground and appear, even though you thought you had picked them all out. Now that word doesn't actually exist. Interesting for a prophetic word. I made it up. That word, not the spiritual word, don't worry. But it is a phenomenon that happens due to the different temperatures of the rocks in the soil. So where you thought you had picked out all the rocks beforehand, they will appear again and the next year, even though they weren't there last year, just to be aware of that. But I think that you are going to see where there has been a lot of work put in to the things that haven't really grown. I think that you are going to see some amazing growth. But it is because of the investment in the work, and it has felt like this doesn't really look like anything except a well-plowed field at this stage. But there is going to be, from that place and all that preparation, some really, really good growth. But sometimes we have to plant the right seeds as well. We have a gardener in church, and we have a really bad depth of soil in the flower bed outside our church. But he had planted all this stuff specifically designed to grow in that climate. So asking God, what is it that we are sowing into? What is the harvest? And what does he want to produce? There's loads that we could take from that. But I think it's really encouraging that God is speaking. I think it's really encouraging that there has been some hard labor. And it's really encouraging that we're beginning to see some fruit. Some signs of life, some signs of growth. And it has been important to journey some of the things that we have journeyed over the last few weeks. Why? Because our roots go deeper. God has been working many of our lives to grow our roots deeper in him, tilling our hearts. And it's often through pain and through suffering, through difficulty, that he makes us fall upon the altar of sacrifice, where he just does stuff in us. Why? So that we can be more fruitful. That was the passage Jesus talks about the vine. Thanks, you got it from acting now. Look at that, it's amazing. He trims the branches that are not producing fruit. Why? So that we would become even more fruitful. Our dear friend Andy Hickford, who spoke the last 2 Januaries, and he's coming again with his lovely wife this January, did a whole stuff with our leaders on Saturday, and he talked about, as leaders, we need to be spiritual agronomists. You ever heard of that word, agronomist? Apparently it's someone that does stuff with soil. And he said, we're not the ones that grow. We're not the growers, right? But our role, part of our role as leaders, is tending to the soil so that the seeds that are sown have a chance to grow in good soil. Last Sunday night, we had our family meeting. So glad for so many of you that came to that. And we kind of reflected on our previous year. And we referred back to our seed document, the vision that we cast over the next number of years. And seed stands for safety, for encounter, for extend, and for discipleship. These 4 core areas that we're pushing into, that we're leading out of in order to create space and place for fruitfulness. And much of that work is actually unseen. Sometimes we refer to it here, but often it's an unseen thing that we're paying attention to. And lots of it is about paying attention to creating the right soil so that life can come, so that good things can grow. Lastly, on this point, and then I need to speed up, is the kingdom growth is steady and it's progressive, and it happens in its time. Like the wee kid that in the science experiment, maybe in primary school, puts a few seeds in the wee polystyrene dish and a bit of water, and then literally comes back the next day in school and goes, why has nothing grown? It takes time. And actually, the older I'm getting, the less time I have left here, the more I learn that God is in no hurry. It's always in his time. And it's learning often in things in life. It happens at the right time. Last one, mustard seed. Again, the first was a story about growth. The second is about triumphant, that we win at the end of the day. Jesus likens this story, the mustard seed, that's tiny. It begins tiny, but actually grows to be this incredible, massive plant where birds can perch on the branches and get shade. What does he mean? He simply means that through this small ragamuffin group of disciples, through them, through the hands and the feet and the voice and the whatever, through those people that began tiny, becomes something that's massive. I was watching this documentary yesterday. It was about Jesus, and it was about the spread and the growth of the kingdom. to all the corners of the earth. The millions of disciples that there are in every walk of this world that came from that one person and through the lives of his disciples. And so one day when he will come again, we're on the right side. Remember the kingdom. Remember his message. It wasn't to come and to overthrow the Roman kingdom. He'd come to defeat an even greater enemy. He had come to defeat Satan himself. Consider some of the best movies that we love. Some war movies, some historical movies of old, fictional movies like Star Wars, and probably the best example, The Lord of the Rings. Why are these stories why do they capture us so much? It's because they are stories about the kingdom. They're about the king. Tolkien, I don't know much. Some of you will know much more of this stuff. But, from the ring of power, that small thing and that small group of the faithfulness of Frodo and Sam and the journey that they began, and they went and they destroyed that through the single mustard seed, defeated Sauron, and the return of the king came. That's why we get caught up in those stories. The kingdom is all about Jesus, heaven's kingdom come here on earth. And one day we will see that. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. He was using this mysterious way of speech, hooking people in, drawing them into greater understanding for those who have ears to hear. But when he was alone with his disciples, he explained everything. Lastly, dessert. We don't have much time. I feel terrible because this is the most incredible story. Most of you know the story, so let's just pick on a couple of things. He's tired. He's on a boat with a fisherman and the rest of his disciples. They cross the sea. The sea's not big. It's 13 miles long. It's 7 or 8 miles wide. Four of the disciples, they've been on the sea all the time. Jesus is tired. He is demonstrating that he's fully human. He is tired, and he goes and has a sleep on the boat. Disciples freak out. He wakes him up. He's like, "Don't you even care about us that we might drown?" Jesus says 3 words: quiet, be still, and it's still. And the disciples, they say, "Who is this guy?" Remember, Mark's gospel is all about demonstrating and describing who Jesus really is. Jesus is fully human. He needed rest. He is fully God because he calmed the storm. And they are even more terrified now than they were that they were about to drown, because they're like, "Who the heck are we with? Look what he's done now. Who is this guy?" He's fully human. He's fully God. And in the storms of our life, Jesus is present. He's present. He is in the boat with us. And he usually does one of 3 things. One is he either calms the storm as we cry out to him. Sometimes he gives us power and authority to calm the storm ourselves, and that's a whole nother teaching. But often, Jesus is present in the boat with us, saying, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Because I am present and I am enough in the midst of your storm."
Thanks for listening to the Carrickfergus Vineyard podcast. If you'd like to find out more about our church, please visit our website, carrickfergusvineyard.org.